That's where we're going to start because, I mean, it's huge whenever they meet. They're at Anfield today, of course, Jonathan. They've led the way for the last few years. Are these still, though, the two best teams in the league?
I think it's the best fixture in the league still. Obviously, they're not the best teams on form at the moment. But in terms of quality, achievement, a sense that we're watching history here because these are two of the best clubs we've seen in the Premier League era. The rivalry between Klopp and Pep, it's still got everything as that major fixture. And the dynamics, because they're different, because Liverpool aren't doing so well and City look better than ever, are a little bit different to recent years, which in some ways makes it more interesting. I can't wait for it.
And you look at the league table this morning, and to find Liverpool, Darren, you have to look in the bottom half. I've got a couple of games in hand on some of the other sides. City, though, have won just once at Anfield in the best part of 20 years. Is this still City's toughest game of the season, do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. And Pep Guardiola has been quite at pains to dismiss all of the noise that he feels surrounds his side and the brilliance of his attacking line and the run they've been on so far, the goals Haaland has been scored, because he says, look, this is Liverpool. That firepower they have. You know, they scored 7 past Rangers, and everybody knows that Rangers, they'd conceded a lot in the previous 2 games. So they are not a barometer as to whether Liverpool are back, in inverted commas, or not, or as to how Liverpool will do against City. And that's why Pep's been at pains to say, look, forget that. This is Liverpool. They always bring their A game when they play us. We are in for a huge match.
So the 7 against Rangers aside, the 9 against Bournemouth aside, Jonathan.
Well, Bournemouth are higher in the league.
Yeah.
Well, they are, absolutely. And Fulham, both above them, yeah. I mean, but why have Liverpool struggled so much this season?
Well, that almost says it all, that there's been a real inconsistency that we haven't seen before. It probably starts with the defence more than anything, and even in the Rangers game, Rangers took the lead and troubled Liverpool before the scoring started. And I think without that defensive foundation, it's spread through the rest of the team. It's been difficult for the attackers, with Núñez coming in and struggling to find the right blend with him, and then injuries in midfield. So I think it's a whole picture, and we've all been, as journalists, looking for answers and trying to pick individual players. Is it Salah? Is it Van Dijk? Liverpool have always been a collective under Klopp, but it does. I think everything this season is based on not being able to defend the way they have.
Well, you mentioned defensive issues, and you look today, obviously Alexander-Arnold's still out, Matip out. There's some stories that Konate could be missing. Now, when you're up against you-know-who, I mean, this must be a worry.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's not just you-know-who, it's Phil Foden, who's got an incredible record against Liverpool as well. And yeah, just as Klopp thinks he's finding some solidity, another injury comes. He's only just got Robertson back. He's had to do without him. The only constant has really been Alisson and Van Dijk, who maybe isn't on proper form. So they're going to have to summon up the spirit. They're going to have to summon up Anfield, the crowd, and try and, I think, bring the intensity, because that's always the key to Klopp's team.
I was trying to think about, you've got Erling Haaland coming to Anfield just with all of these injuries. It's like when the bad guy in a horror movie after you, the car won't start. You're in real trouble.
And it's Robocop, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think as far as Liverpool are concerned, they conceded the first goal, 10 of their last 12 games. They are a side that, when you looked at them playing Brighton, there was no press, there was no intensity. Brighton are wonderful technicians, as we all know, but they gave them the room to play, and that intensity has been missing from their game.
But why would that be? Because that's been a given in Klopp's Liverpool, hasn't it, for years?
Yeah, I mean, there's theories that they overextended themselves last year by going for the four titles and maybe rinsing the players in terms of energy. Players are getting older. You can't you can't change the age on their passports, and that's a fact. Some of the players are in their 30s. And I think just Klopp works at such a pitch of intensity that there's maybe going to be mental tiredness at times. But there's a lot of analysis as to whether this is a terminal decline for Klopp's Liverpool. I think it's probably more of a temporary blip, and we are only 10 games into the season, and they have won 9-0. They have scored 7 in another game. They haven't been totally hopeless. Let's just wait and see where we are in a few months' time, because I think it's a bit early to look at this as Liverpool falling off the cliff.
Question marks over Van Dijk's form this season, but Darren, how much are you looking forward to seeing him and, I call him you-know-who, Erling Haaland, the phenomenon, going head-to-head today?
Yeah, absolutely. Clash of the Titans. And let me take you to the Mail on Sunday, because there's a good piece that focuses on both players. The stats all down the right-hand side, as you can see on the screen. Joe Bernstein's done the piece, and this is the subdeck here. Struggling Virgil can silence his critics, and huge deal with Haaland. And it will go some way to maybe re-establishing his status as one of the finest defenders in Europe if he can silence rampant Haaland. I know you did a piece last week, Johnny, that Haaland's strike rate is 1 in 2 compared to, I think it's 1 in 6 for Nunes and 1 in 4, I think it is, for Kane.
He's off the charts, though.
It's off the charts. The numbers are off the charts. So as far as Van Dijk's concerned, it's his reading of the game, his ability to maybe stop the supply line to defenders. Sometimes his effortlessness and his calm and poise is misinterpreted as a kind of lackadaisical attitude. And I think that counts against him when they're losing, but when they're winning and when they're doing well, people obviously appreciate the way he plays the game. Yeah,
and I think one of Van Dijk's issues this season is he's always defended by presence almost, by having this sort of charisma as a player. And we'd see him in previous seasons almost dare the striker to try and run past him and use that beautiful recovery pace to get there. Now that the crown has slipped a little bit and people are taking him on, and Haaland will take him on, Haaland's not scared of anything, he's going to have to defend in a different way. And I agree with you, Darren, we're going to learn a lot about Virgil van Dijk today and where he is in his career.
Yeah, if Haaland was in that car that wasn't starting, he'd be taking on the bad guy, wouldn't he? Don't you worry about that. Tell us about the piece you've written on Haaland in the Sunday Times today.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge on Haaland is already we're running out of things to say about him. So I just tried to look at his impact through the sort of lens of 10 touches, 10 involvements in the game, and try and pick things out of there. And there's so many elements to his game, but one of the things that really stands out is how focused, for a young player, how patient and focused he is. And you know, 27 of his 36 shots have been first time. A third of his touches have been in the box. Now, if you look at a chart of all the strikers in Europe, you know, it's like Erling Haaland there and the rest of them are over here. He's a complete outlier in how sort of concentrated the work in the box is. That's before you get to the power and the pace. So I was just trying to look at all the different bits of his game. And, you know, it's been around on social media, that moment where he goes and picks up the referee's spray can is extraordinary. I wrote about that because to me that also just shows this is a guy playing the game at a different mental pace almost to anyone else, who seems to just be almost within it and read it so well.
He's so young and the numbers are off the chart. I think he's scored more goals after 22 games than Mbappe in the Champions League, and Mbappe had taken that record off Messi. And I know last week we were talking about Haaland and eulogy. We do it every week, let's not kid ourselves, but we're talking about him being now the leader of this next generation of players, let alone strikers, standing on his own. Where does he rate for you?
Already he's iconic. I love Mbappe, and you know, I'll never forget being in Moscow and watching him winning a World Cup final at that age, and you thought the future belongs to this guy. But football's got a way of changing predictions, and maybe the future is as much Erling Haaland's, if not more, because he just seems to be redefining everything we thought was possible. The size, the speed, just the sheer goals, the relentlessness of it, and the sense that he's just got this appetite and he's improving all the time. And where's it going to end? He is already iconic. And one thing you mentioned, the Champions League, Dan, that stood out for me when I was researching that piece. He's got 28 Champions League goals already. That's only 2 behind Rooney, who played 85 times in the Champions League. He's only played 22 times.
And this part of the reason why last week I was raving about him. People were saying, well, why are you going on about him being one of the greats already? But he's ripping up the numbers of the greats already. And he's barely, 2 months into his career at Manchester City. Yeah. And I think that's quite a key thing, because I think City is the right club for him. He is surrounded by superstars, guys who know how to win the league. They've been the course, they've been the distance, but their feet are firmly on the ground. there is no there's no sense of getting carried away with what they've achieved already. The mentality at the football club is fantastic. You compare that with PSG, where yes, Mbappe is magnificent, but Mbappe is always caught up in these dramas, these interpersonal disagreements or disputes, or the club, he must have this, he must have that. And it just seems to be a little bit of an unhealthy environment compared to the one that exists at the Etihad.
Yeah, I think Mbappe has been projected by the club to be the superstar, and maybe it's changed his sense of who he is, whereas Haaland does seem to be a team player as much as anything else. And I found myself watching lots of Haaland stuff this week, including the rap video he made when he was like a 16-year-old. But you can just see a normal kid.
We've all done that, come on.
The Haaland rap.
I haven't.
Video, yeah. He doesn't do a lot of the rapping, I'd have to say. He kind of does a bit of the standing around at the back. But you could see there that he's a normal lad with his mates.
Yeah.
That comes across in the Norwegian documentary he made, where he still goes on holiday with his pals from school. And then you look at the football side of things and his relationship already with people like Foden, and you get a sense that he's a team player. He's a sort of collective guy as well as this individual superstar.
Yeah. Just one quick one to wrap up on this, because I think as far as last week was concerned, it was really fitting that some of the other players in the side grabbed goals, Foden, De Bruyne, because as I've been saying all the time, and Super Sunday match, they went to the Manchester derby, and we saw the way that if you try to stop Haaland, Foden scores. When you try to stop Foden, Cancelo can provide that individual brilliance that he scored with last weekend. So there were so many other players, and we haven't even got to De Bruyne, who is just creating more chances than anybody else in the Premier League, and is almost the orchestra leader, if you like, in the way that he pulls the strings.
Yeah.
And if Haaland's going to break records, I think he's going to help De Bruyne break the records. He's already halfway to the assists record. And you can just see that combination monotonously working again and again throughout the year.
I think he's had more assists already this season in the Premier League than he had all of last season.